You are asleep at this very moment. Not physically, of course, but an essential part of you. The part that truly matters. The part that truly creates, that truly feels, that truly lives. That part is asleep. It is asleep while you read it is asleep while you work, while you make decisions, while you believe you are in control of your life. And that is why you cannot change. That is why your destiny remains written by other hands, by patterns you didn't even choose. Carl Jung, a man who spent 50 years ascending into the depths of the human psyche, exploring territories no other psychologist dared to, arrived in a conclusion that would forever change how we understand who we are. He was not just a psychologist. Jung was an alchemist of the soul, a cartographer of the visible, a man who understood that true reality lies not in the external world you see, but in the inner world you ignore. And the most unsettling discovery Jung made was about what truly happens when you close your eyes at night. Body surrenders to rest when your breathing becomes slow. Something extraordinary, something that completely transcends your rational understanding, begins to happen within you. Not just physical rest, not just a pause in brain activity. Death, a symbolic death, a complete dissolution of what you believe yourself to be today. And in this death, in this absolute unconsciousness, the real work begins. The work that rewrites your destiny. The work that transforms who you are at the deepest level of your existence. Jung called this the most important portal of human existence. It wasn't poetic exaggeration. It was a clinical observation, a truth he had proven through decades of research, analysis of thousands of dreams, and profound dialogues with the unconscious. During those 2 minutes of deep sleep, just 2 minutes, your unconscious works at speeds your conscious mind could. It processes information you don't even know. It solves problems you don't even know you have. It creates solutions to challenges you believe possible. Rewrites the fundamental code of your existence. But here's the point most people never understand. Those 2 minutes can literally rewrite your entire destiny. Not partially, not superficially, completely, totally, irreversibly. Because during those 2 minutes, during that absolute unconsciousness, you are not under the control of your conscious. You are not filtering reality through your limiting. You are not being controlled by your fears, by insecurities, by those voices that tell you that you are not good enough. You are free, completely free. For the first and perhaps only time in your day, you are truly free. And it is in this freedom, in this absence of conscious control, that the miracle, it is in this void that creation emerges. It is in this darkness that true light shines. Jung had discovered something that most modern scientists still deny. That the unconscious is not a dumping ground for psychological garbage, not a place of chaos and irrationality. No, the unconscious is the source of all real intelligence, of all true creativity, of all wisdom that transcends rational understanding. It is the womb of the unconscious. Part 1. The call of the Master Jung and the portal of the unconscious. You are asleep at this very moment. Not physically, of course, but an essential part of you. The part that truly matters, the part that truly creates, that truly feels, that truly lives. That part is asleep. It is asleep while you read. It is asleep while you work, while you make decisions, while you believe you are in control of your life. And that is why you cannot change. That is why your destiny remains written by other hands, patterns you didn't even choose. Carl Jung, a man who spent 50 years delving into the depths of the human psyche, arrived at a conclusion that would forever change how we understand who we truly are. He wasn't just a psychologist. Jung was an alchemist of the soul, a cartographer of the visible, a man who understood that true reality lies not in the external world you see, but in the inner world you ignore. And the most unsettling discovery Jung made was about what really happens when you sleep. You close your eyes at night, when your body surrenders to rest, when your breathing becomes deep and slow, something extraordinary happens. Not just physical rest, not just a pause in brain activity. It's a death, symbolic death, a complete dissolution of what you believe yourself to be during the day. And in this death, in this absolute unconsciousness, the real work begins. The work that rewrites your destiny. The work that transforms who you are at the deepest level of your existence. Jung called this the most important portal of human existence. It wasn't poetic exaggeration. It was a clinical observation, a truth he had proven through decades of research, analysis of thousands of dreams, and profound dialogues with the unconscious. During those 2 minutes of deep sleep, just 2 minutes, your unconscious works at speeds your conscious mind could never achieve. It processes information you don't even know you possess. It solves problems you don't even know you have. It creates solutions to challenges you believe possible. It rewrites the fundamental code of your existence. But here's the point most people never understand. Those 2 minutes can literally rewrite your entire destiny. Not partially, not superficially, completely, totally, irreversibly. Because during those 2 minutes, during that absolute unconsciousness, you are not under the control of your conscious mind. You are not filtering reality through your limiting beliefs. You are not being controlled by your fears, by your insecurities, by those voices that tell you that you are not good enough. You are free, completely free. For the first and perhaps only time in your day, you are truly free. And it is in this freedom, in this absence of conscious control, that the miracle, it is in this void that creation emerges. It is in this darkness that true light shines. Jung had discovered something that most modern scientists still deny, that the unconscious is not a dumping ground for psychological garbage, not a place of chaos and irrationality. No, the unconscious is the source of all real intelligence, of all true creativity, of all wisdom that transcends rational understanding. It is the cosmic womb from which true transformation emerges. Billions of people wake up every day without the slightest idea of the power that lies dormant within. Billions spend entire nights in communion with forces that transcend their understanding. They don't know they are being rewritten. They don't know their destiny is being touched by the invisible hand of the unconscious. They don't know they could awaken as completely different people if only they understood what is really happening in sleep. And that is why they continue living the same lives, having the same results, repeating the same patterns, trapped in cycles. Jung wasn't being dramatic when he explored this idea. He was pointing to a fundamental truth about how we function as human beings, a truth that remains ignored, a truth that is suppressed, a truth that is denied by those who profit from your ignorance. Because if you truly understood the power that exists within you, if you truly understood that you can rewrite your destiny during sleep, everything would change. You would change. Your life would change. The world would change. Jung spent his entire life trying to show us that true reality is not what you see with your eyes. True reality is what you experience when your eyes are closed, when the conscious mind is silent, when you enter that state of absolute unconsciousness. It is in this state that you touch the truth. It is in this state that you touch the fundamental reality of your existence. It is in this state that you touch the power that can rewrite everything. But how is it possible that 2 minutes of unconsciousness can rewrite an entire destiny? How is it possible that while you sleep, while you are doing absolutely nothing, your life is being transformed? How is it possible that the answer to all your problems, to all your limitations, to all your difficulties is waiting for you when you close your eyes? The answer lies in something Jung called the work of the collective unconscious. And it is an answer that will challenge everything you believe. You know about yourself. Jung had discovered that during sleep, during that state of absolute unconsciousness, you are not just processing your personal experiences. You are connected to something much greater. You are connected to a universal reservoir of wisdom, to archetypal patterns that transcend individual experience, to an intelligence that is shared by all of humanity. When you sleep, you are not alone in your room. You are connected to billions of other people who are also sleeping, who are also in absolute unconsciousness, who are also accessing this same universal reservoir. That's why your dreams often contain symbols you've never seen before, that you've never learned, you could never have consciously created. That's why you sometimes wake up with solutions to problems you didn't even know you had. That's why great artists, great scientists, great thinkers often report that their greatest creations came to them in moments of unconsciousness, moments when the conscious mind was completely switched off. Imagine you woke up this morning and did exactly what you do. Got up, had your coffee, checked your phone, saw the same depressing news, received the same messages from people who never seem satisfied. You looked in the mirror and saw the same person as always, same tired eyes, the same face you've seen, the same feeling that something is missing. You should be somewhere else. Your life should be different. When you finally got home, when you finally had a moment of peace, you wondered, why is my life like this? Why can't I change? Why do I remain the same person? This is the question Carl Jung heard thousands of times throughout his career. Desperate patients, ordinary people like you, would come to him and ask the same question. Jung, with that penetrating gaze that seemed to see through the layers of the human psyche, knew exactly what the problem was. He knew that these people were not failures. They were not incapable. They were prisoners. Prisoners of something they couldn't even see. Prisoners of patterns that had been engraved so deeply in their psyche that they seemed to be reality itself. Jung spent decades exploring the unconscious. What he discovered was revolutionary. He didn't see the unconscious as Freud had seen it, as a psychological garbage dump, a place of repressed impulses and buried traumas. No, Jung understood that the unconscious was something much deeper, much more intelligent, much more creative than anything the conscious mind could ever generate. Jung discovered that the unconscious is the source of all genuine creativity. It is where all real innovation emerges. It is where all wisdom that transcends rational understanding comes from. When you see an artist create a masterpiece, when you see a scientist make a revolutionary discovery, when you see a writer write something that deeply touches people's hearts, What is really happening is that this person has allowed their unconscious to work. They have allowed this infinite creative force to express itself through them. That is why these creations are so powerful, so authentic, so transformative. But here's the point Jung discovered that changed everything. Most people never allow their unconscious to work. They spend their entire lives trying to control everything through the mind, trying to force solutions, trying to impose their will, trying to dominate reality through the brute force of reason. And that's why they fail. That's why they get stuck, why their destinies remain. Jung introduced a concept that would be the key to unlocking all of this. A concept he had developed through years of research, analysis of thousands of dreams, and profound dialogues with patients from different cultures and eras. He called it the collective unconscious. And when Jung revealed this idea, many called him crazy. But Jung knew he had discovered something that transcended conventional scientific understanding. The collective unconscious was the idea that beyond the personal unconscious, beyond those traumas and memories you carry individually, there is an unconscious shared by all of humanity, a reservoir of archetypal patterns, universal symbols, and ancestral wisdom that transcends cultures, eras, and geographies. Jung had noticed something extraordinary. People from different parts of the world, people who had never met, people who lived in different eras, often had very similar dreams. They often used the same symbols. They often told the same stories, only a man in India dreamed of a dragon, a woman in Norway dreamed, a boy in Africa dreamed of a dragon. And when Jung analyzed these dreams, he realized that the dragon meant the same thing to all of them. It signified challenge. It signified transformation. It signified that which needs to be overcome so that you can evolve. How was it possible that people who never met, who lived in completely different worlds, shared the same symbols? The answer was disturbing. It was almost impossible for the rational mind to accept. But Jung had proven it through clinical evidence. It was a connection, an invisible connection that united all of humanity. A connection that transcended time, space, culture, and language. And that connection was the collective unconscious. When you sleep deeply, when you enter that state of absolute unconsciousness, you are not just processing your personal experiences. You are connected to this universal intelligence. You are tapping into this infinite reservoir of wisdom. You are accessing patterns that have been developed over millions of years of human evolution. You are in contact with the wisdom of your ancestors, wisdom of cultures that disappeared centuries ago, with the wisdom of generations that came before you. And that's why your dreams often contain images you've never seen before. That's why you sometimes wake up with solutions to problems you didn't even know you had. That's why you sometimes have insights that seem to come from nowhere, seem to be inspired by something beyond, because you're connected to something much greater. You're connected to the collective unconscious. And when you sleep, when you enter a state of complete unconsciousness, that connection intensifies. But Jung had discovered something even more disturbing. He had discovered that during the day, his conscious mind functions as a filter, a very efficient filter. A filter that selects only what fits into his pre-existing. A filter that rejects everything that doesn't fit into his world. You only see what you believe. You only hear what you believe. You only experience what you believe. And everything else, all the reality that doesn't fit your worldview, is simply filtered out, rejected. It's as if you were living in a prison made of yours. But when you sleep, when you enter that state of absolute unconsciousness, that filter disappears. It simply ceases to function. And it is at that moment that true communication happens. It is at that moment that the unconscious can speak to you in its purest language, the language of symbols, of archetypes, of universal patterns. It is at that moment that you finally have access to reality as it truly is, not as you believe it to be. For centuries, in the secret laboratories of medieval Europe, men called alchemists worked obsessively on a task that most people considered impossible. They wanted to transform lead into gold. They wanted to find the philosopher's stone. They wanted to discover the elixir of eternal life. Modern science ridiculed these men, called them madmen, charlatans, fanatics, who wasted their lives chasing an illusion. But Carl Jung had understood something that most modern scientists had completely missed. He had understood that the alchemists weren't really trying to turn lead into gold. Not literally. They were using alchemy as a symbolic language to describe something much. They were describing the transformation of the human soul. They were describing the process by which an ordinary, limited human being, trapped in their patterns, could become something extraordinary, enlightened, complete. And Jung had discovered that this alchemical transformation process was not merely a poetic metaphor. It was a real process. A process that took place within you, within your psyche, within your unconscious. And this process had a name. Jung called it individuation. But before you could understand individuation, you needed to understand alchemy. His individuation was alchemy. It was the transformation of the lead of your limited existence into the gold of your true nature. It was the symbolic death of who you believe yourself to be, rebirth of who you truly are. When you fall into a deep sleep, when you enter that state of absolute unconsciousness, you are not simply resting. You are dying. You are entering a void, a primordial chaos where all forms dissolve. That you that existed during the day with your beliefs, your fears, your limitations disappears completely. You enter a state that is very similar to death. And in this state of symbolic death, in this absolute unconsciousness, alchemy happens. The work of the unconscious begins. The unconscious works like an alchemist in his laboratory. It takes the elements of your psyche, the patterns you carry, the beliefs you've accumulated, the traumas you've buried, and begins to work with them. It separates them, it dissolves them, it recombines them in new, creative, transformative ways. It takes what is essential and discards what is superfluous, purifies, refines, transforms. And when you wake up, when you emerge from this symbolic death, you are different. You have been rewritten, you have been refined, you have been transformed. But how is it possible for this alchemical transformation process to happen while you are unconscious? Jung had discovered that dreams were not random. They weren't just the brain processing information from the previous day. Dreams were messages. They were direct communications they were the way the unconscious spoke to you. Jung had developed a practice he called active amplification. It was a way of working with dream symbols, exploring them, understanding them in depth. What Jung had discovered was even deeper. He had discovered that dreams were not just communications from the personal unconscious. They were communications from the collective unconscious. They were messages of universal wisdom. They were archetypal symbols containing knowledge that transcended individual experience. Imagine you have a dream. You dream that you are in a dark forest. There is a frightening creature chasing you. You run and run, but you escape. You wake up with your heart racing, scared, with that unsettling feeling that lingers throughout the day. Most people would try to forget this dream. They would try to ignore it. But Jung knew that this dream had a profound meaning. He knew that this frightening creature wasn't really a creature. It was a symbol. It was a representation of something within you that you were rejecting, that you're running away from, that you're trying to avoid. And here's the crucial point that Jung had discovered. What you reject doesn't disappear. What you deny doesn't dissolve. What you run away from doesn't stop pursuing you. It only buries itself deeper in the unconscious. It gains more power over you. It becomes more frightening, more threatening, more real. Because what is rejected is always more powerful than what is accepted. And that's why your nightmares are so vivid, so disturbing, so real. Because the unconscious is desperately trying to make you understand something you're refusing to understand. Jung had discovered something even deeper. He had discovered that when you finally stop running away, when you finally turn around and face that frightening creature, when you finally allow it to approach, when you finally embrace it, something extraordinary happens. That creature transforms. It is no longer frightening. It becomes an ally. It becomes a source of power. It becomes an integrated part of you. And it is in this integration that the true alchemical transformation takes place. Alchemy isn't about becoming better. It's not about becoming more positive, more enlightened, more spiritual. Alchemy is about becoming whole. It's about integrating it's about embracing your totality, not just the part you'd like to be. And when you do that, when you truly integrate all parts of yourself, something fundamentally changes. You become complete. You become real. You become powerful in a way you've never experienced before. During deep sleep, during that absolute unconsciousness, unconscious is doing exactly that. It's trying to integrate the parts of you that you rejected. It's trying to bring to light what you've buried. It's trying to make you understand that what you're running away from is actually an essential part of you. It's trying to make you accept your totality. And when you allow this process to happen, when you truly surrender to it, the alchemical transformation intensifies. Jung had discovered that this alchemical transformation was not a linear process. It wasn't like climbing a ladder. It was a cyclical, spiraling process where you always return to the same themes, but at deeper levels of understanding. You face the same fear. This time, you understand it better. You encounter the same pattern. This time, you can see it from a different perspective. And that's why every night of deep sleep is important. Every moment of complete unconsciousness is a turn in this spiral. Every dream is an opportunity for deeper integration. Thomas Edison, one of history's greatest inventors, had a strange habit that his assistants often commented on. He slept during the day. These weren't long naps, short snoozes of a few minutes, strategically distributed throughout the day. And when he woke up, he often had solutions to problems he had been trying to solve. His assistants found this bizarre. But Edison knew something they didn't. He knew that his best insights came not when he was consciously working, but when he allowed his unconscious work. Carl Jung had studied cases like Edison's. He had analyzed the lives of great creators, great thinkers, great innovators, and he had discovered a pattern that repeated itself again, all of them in some way, had learned to work with their unconscious. All of them, in some way, had understood that the real work wasn't done when you were awake and conscious. The real work was done when you allowed your unconscious to work. But Jung had discovered something that went beyond simply sleeping well. He had discovered that there was a specific way to prepare for the work of the unconscious, a way that intensified the process, a way that allowed the unconscious to work with much more power, much more depth, much more effectiveness. Jung called this a conscious attitude, and this conscious attitude wasn't something you did only when you were sleeping. It was something you cultivated throughout the day. It was a way of being, a way of thinking, a way of relating to your unconscious that created the perfect conditions for it. The conscious attitude that Jung advocated was fundamentally different from the one most people cultivated. Most people spent the entire day in a state of control, trying to control their thoughts, trying to control their emotions, trying to control the events around them, trying to force things to happen the way they wanted. And when night came, when they finally went to sleep, this attitude of control didn't disappear. It continued. They slept with tension. They slept with resistance. And that's why their dreams were often restless, why they woke up tired. That's why the work of the unconscious was blocked. Jung had understood that true transformation, the transformation that rewrites your destiny, is only possible when you cultivate a completely different attitude, an attitude of humility, an attitude of openness, an attitude of trust, an attitude that recognized that there were forces within you that were far more intelligent than your rational mind, an attitude that allowed those forces to work, an attitude that surrendered to the infinite process working within you. But how do you cultivate this attitude? How do you move from an attitude of control to an attitude of surrender? Jung had developed specific practices. One of these techniques was what Jung called active amplification. It was a way of dialoguing with your unconscious while you were awake. It was a way of asking questions of your conscious and really listening to the answers. You would sit in a quiet place. You would close your eyes. You would ask your subconscious a question. Not a superficial question, a deep question. A question that truly mattered to you. A question about who you were, about what you wanted, about what you're asked. Part 4. The conscious attitude, Jung in preparation for night work. Thomas Edison, one of history's greatest inventors, had a strange habit that his assistants often commented on. He slept during the day. These weren't long naps, short snoozes of a few minutes, strategically distributed throughout the day. And when he woke up, he often had solutions to problems he had been trying to solve. His assistants found this bizarre. But Edison knew something they didn't. He knew that his best insights came not when he was consciously working. When he allowed his unconscious, he knew there was an intelligence within him, far more creative, far more intelligent, far more capable than his conscious mind. Carl Jung had studied cases like Edison's. He had analyzed the lives of great creators, great thinkers, great innovators, and he had discovered a pattern that repeated itself again. All of them, in some way, had learned to work with their unconscious. All of them had understood that the real work wasn't done when you were awake and conscious. The real work was done when you allowed your unconscious to work. But Jung had discovered something that went beyond simply sleeping well. He had discovered that there was a specific way to prepare for the work of the unconscious, a way that intensified the process, a way that allowed the unconscious to work with much more power, much more depth, much more effectiveness. Jung called this a conscious attitude, and this conscious attitude wasn't something you did only when you were sleeping. It was something you cultivated throughout the day. It was a way of being, a way of thinking, a way of relating to your unconscious that created the perfect conditions for it to work. The conscious attitude that Jung advocated was fundamentally different from the one most people cultivated. Most people spent the entire day in a state of control, trying to control their thoughts, trying to control their emotions, trying to control the events around them, trying to force things to happen. And when night came, when they finally went to sleep, this attitude of control didn't disappear. They slept with tension, they slept with resistance, and that's why their dreams were often restless, why they woke up tired. That's why the work of the unconscious was blocked. Jung had understood that true transformation, the transformation that rewrites your destiny, is only possible when you cultivate a completely different attitude of humility, an attitude of openness, an attitude of trust, an attitude that recognized there were forces within you that were far more intelligent than your rational mind, an attitude that allowed those forces to work, an attitude that surrendered to the infinite process working within you. But how do you cultivate this attitude? How do you move from an attitude of control to an attitude of surrender? Jung had developed specific practices for this. One of these techniques was what Jung called active amplification. It was a way of dialoguing with your conscious while you were. It was a way of asking questions of your conscious and really listening to the answers. You would sit in a quiet place. You would close your eyes. You would ask your subconscious a question, a deep question, a question that truly mattered to you, a question about who you were, about what you wanted, about what scared you, about what limited you. And then you would wait. You would allow the answers to come. Not answers from your conscious, answers that came from a much deeper place, answers that often surprised you. Jung had discovered that when you did this regularly, when you truly engaged in dialogue with your conscious during the day, something changes. Your unconscious begins to trust you. It begins to understand that you're willing to listen. Begins to understand that you're not trying to control or silence. Begins to understand that you truly want to work. And when the unconscious senses this openness, this willingness to listen, this collaborative attitude, it works much more intensely. A woman Jung had worked with, a woman named Hild, had spent years in depression. She had tried everything. She had taken medication. She had gone to therapy. Nothing worked. When she finally came to Jung, she was desperate. But Jung taught her the practice of active amplification. He taught her to dialogue with her unconscious. He taught her to ask deep questions, really listen to the answers. Hild began doing this every day. She would sit, close her eyes, and ask her subconscious, "Why am I depressed?" And the answers that came were surprising. Weren't the answers she expected. They were answers that spoke to parts of herself she had rejected. Answers that spoke to abilities she stressed. Answers that spoke to a life she had refused to live. When Hild began to truly listen to those answers, she began to understand what her unconscious was trying to tell her. Something changed. She began to integrate those rejected parts of herself. She began to allow those suppressed abilities to emerge. She began to live the life her unconscious had been trying to make her live. Her depression disappeared. Not because she took better medication. It disappeared because she finally listened to her. Because she finally cultivated an attitude of collaboration with that which was much greater than herself. Jung had seen this pattern repeat itself hundreds of times. Whenever a person cultivated a conscious attitude of openness and trust, whenever they truly engaged in dialogue with their unconscious during the day, whenever they allowed their unconscious to work, something extraordinary happened. Their lives changed. Their destinies were rewritten. They became different people. But Jung had discovered something even deeper. There was a specific time of day when this conscious attitude was most important. A time when what you did had the greatest impact on the work your unconscious would do during the night. That time was night, just before you fell asleep. It was that transition period between being awake and being asleep. It was that moment when your conscious mind was beginning to shut down, but was still present enough to communicate an intention to you. Jung had developed a specific practice for this moment. You would lie down. You would relax your body. You would allow your breathing to become deep and slow. And then, in that transitional state, you would communicate an intention to your unconscious. Not an order, an intention, a permission, a surrender. You could say something like, "My unconscious is working to transform me. My unconscious is rewriting my destiny. I allow this to happen. I trust this process. I surrender to this infinite intelligence that works within me." And when you did that, when you truly communicated that intention in that transitional state, your unconscious received the message. It would understand that you were cooperating. It would understand that you were allowing it. And when the unconscious senses this permission, this cooperation, conscious surrender, it works with extraordinary intensity. There was something Jung had observed in his patients that deeply disturbed him. Something that kept him awake at night, thinking, questioning, exploring. He had noticed that the most unhappy people, the most limited people, the people whose destinies remained trapped in repetitive and destructive cycles, had one thing in common. They were all running away from something. They were all rejecting something within themselves. They were all denying an essential part of who they were. And the more they ran away, the more they rejected, the more they denied, the more trapped they became. It was as if there was a force within them that refused to be ignored, a force that screamed louder and louder as they tried to silence it, a force that became more powerful as they tried to control it. Jung had spent years trying to understand this force, and finally, after studying thousands of cases, after analyzing countless dreams, after engaging deeply in dialogue with his own unconscious, he had understood what it was. He had understood that this force was the shadow. The shadow was everything you didn't want to be, everything you rejected in yourself, everything you denied. Your fears, your weaknesses, your destructive capabilities, your desires that you considered unacceptable, your emotions that you considered inadequate, parts of yourself that you considered ugly or evil. Shadow was the dark side of you, the side you tried to hide from the world, the side you tried to hide from yourself. And Jung had discovered that most people spent their entire lives running from the shadow. They spent their entire lives trying to be only light, only good, only positive. They spent their entire lives denying the existence of the shadow. Jung knew this was a dangerous illusion. What you reject doesn't disappear. What you deny doesn't dissolve. What you run from doesn't stop pursuing you. It only buries itself deeper in the end. And the deeper it buries itself, the more power it gains over you. Because what is rejected is always more powerful than what is accepted. What is denied is always more real than what is acknowledged. And that's why people who spend their whole lives trying to be good, trying to be positive, trying to be spiritual, often explode. They often do things that completely contradict what they often behave in ways that shock and embarrass, because the shadow has finally found a way to express itself. Jung had seen this happen countless times. A pastor who had preached about sexual purity for decades was discovered in a sex scandal. A therapist who had taught about compassion was discovered being cruel to his family. A spiritual leader who had preached about detachment was discovered accumulating wealth, and Jung understood what was happening. These people weren't hypocrites. They were simply people who had rejected their shadows so deeply that the shadow had finally found a way to express itself. And when it expressed itself, it did so with a virtually irresistible force. But Jung had discovered something that changed everything. He had discovered that there was a way to work with the shadow. A way not just to accept the shadow, but integrate it. A way to bring the shadow into the light, not to destroy you, but to complete you. A way to embrace your totality, not just the part you would like to be. And when you did that, when you truly integrated your shadow, something extraordinary happened. You became whole. You became real. You became powerful in a way you had never experienced before. During deep sleep, during that absolute unconscious, the unconscious was constantly trying to make you integrate your shadow. Your dreams often contained symbols of the shadow, frightening creatures, threatening people, disturbing situations. But Jung knew that these were not meaningless nightmares. They were invitations. They were invitations from the unconscious for you to finally face what you had been running. They were invitations for you to finally embrace your totality. A man named Marcus had come to Jung with a specific problem. Marcus had recurring nightmares. Every night he dreamed that he was being chased by a dark man, a menacing figure he could never see clearly. The man pursued him through dark streets, through abandoned buildings, through constantly changing lands. And Marcus ran. He ran desperately. He ran in terror. And always, he woke up with his heart racing and cold sweat, with that feeling of dread that remained throughout the day. Marcus had tried everything to get rid of these nightmares. Nothing worked. The nightmares continued. And when he finally reached Jung, he was desperate. Jung asked him something no one had ever asked before. Jung asked, "What if you stopped running? What if you turned around and faced the man? What if you allowed him to get closer?" Marcus thought Jung had lost his mind. But Jung explained that the dark man wasn't really a man. It was a symbol. It was a representation of something inside Marcus and the more Marcus ran away, the more he fled, the more real, the more threatening, the more frightening the man. Because what is rejected is always more powerful than what is accepted. Jung taught Marcus a practice. He taught Marcus too, in his dreams, stop running, turn around, face the dark man, to allow him to approach. Marcus began practicing this during the day. He imagined himself in his dreams, stopping running, turning around, facing the dark man. And slowly, very slowly, something began to change. His dreams began to change. One night, in a dream, Marcus actually stopped running. He turned around, he faced the dark man. And when the man approached, when Marcus finally saw him clearly, he understood something that shocked him deep. The dark man was him, Marcus. It was the part of Marcus that he had rejected. It was the aggressive part, the part that wanted power, the part that wanted to dominate, the part he had spent his whole life trying to deny. And when Marcus understood this, when he truly understood that the man who frightened him was actually a part of him, something extraordinary happened. He embraced the man. He literally embraced the shadow in his dream. And when he did that, when he truly integrated that part of himself, the nightmares disappeared. Not because he had escaped the shadow, but because he had stopped running from it, as he had allowed it to become part of who he was. Jung had understood that this integration of the shadow was absolutely essential for real transformation. It was absolutely essential to rewriting your destiny. Because while you were running from the shadow, while you were denying the shadow, you were using all your energy to keep the shadow repressed. You were using all your creativity, all your intelligence, all your strength to keep the shadow buried. And that meant you had no energy, no creativity, no strength to create the life you truly wanted. You were trapped in a pattern of denial, of rejection, of escape. But when you integrated the shadow, when you allowed the shadow to become part of you, something fundamentally changed. Suddenly, you had access to all that energy that had been used to repress the shadow. Suddenly, you had access to all that creativity that had been used to deny the shadow. Suddenly, you had access to all that strength that had been used to keep the shadow buried. And with that energy, that creativity, that strength, you could finally create the life you truly wanted. You could finally rewrite your destiny. Jung had developed a specific practice for working with the shadow during sleep. A practice that allowed you to integrate the shadow safely, gradually, so that you wouldn't be destroyed by the process. You would lie down. You would relax. And then, in that transitional state between being awake and being asleep, you would invite the shadow. You would say something like, "I recognize you. I accept you. I allow you to be part of me. I integrate you into my..." And when you did that, When you truly invited the shadow, something happened in your dream. Your dreams changed. They began to become more vivid, more intense, more meaningful. You began to encounter the shadow in your dream. You began to dialogue with it. You began to understand what it wanted, what it needed, why it had been rejected. Slowly, very slowly, you began to integrate the shadow. A woman named Sarah had worked with this practice. Sarah was a very controlled, very rigid woman, very focused on being good, on being appropriate, being acceptable. She had spent her entire life denying her desire, denying her emotions, denying anything that could be considered inappropriate. Her dreams were often about being trapped, about being confined, about being suffocated. And Sarah hated her dream. But Jung asked her, what if you allowed the wild part, the part that wants freedom, the part that wants to truly live, to emerge? Sarah began inviting the shadow into her. She began allowing the wild side of her to emerge, and her dreams began to change. They began to become less about being trapped and more about being free. And when Sarah woke up, she was more alive, she was more real, she was more authentic. Carl Jung dedicated the last years of his life to a concept that transcended everything he had explored before: individuation. It wasn't about becoming an ordinary individual. It was about becoming who you truly were. About realizing your potential, singular essence, your particular destiny. It was about finally awakening to who you really were, beyond all the masks, beyond all the programming you had accumulated throughout your life. Jung knew that individuation was not a process that happened during the day through conscious struggle. It was a process that happened primarily at night, during those moments of absolute unconsciousness, when the unconscious had total freedom to work. Each night of deep sleep was an opportunity for individuation. Each night was an opportunity to become more yourself, more authentic. Because while you slept, while you were in absolute unconsciousness, the unconscious was working to integrate all aspects of you, to unify all the fragmented parts of your psyche, to create a totality that was unique and singular. Jung had understood that you were not a finished product. You were a process, a journey that wasn't linear, but a spiral that always returned to the same themes, a journey that had a purpose that transcended your individual understanding. And each night of deep sleep was a step on that. Each dream was a message from the unconscious about the next step you needed. Because individuation wasn't about becoming something you weren't. It was about removing the layers of illusion and finally revealing the truth that had been waiting inside you all along. Right now, at this very moment, you are at a turning point. You are on a threshold. On one side of that threshold is the life you have been. Life where you woke up the same person every day. A life where you repeated the same patterns, had the same results, lived the same destiny. On the other side of that threshold is a completely different life. A life where you wake up as a different person. A life where you finally become who you truly are. A life where your destiny is rewritten. And the choice of which side of the threshold you will stand on is yours. No one can make that choice for you. No book can make that choice for you. No video can make that choice. Because true transformation, true individuation is only possible when you truly choose. When you commit to that choice. When you allow that choice to work through you. Here's what you need to do. Tonight, when you go to sleep, do something different. Don't sleep like you always have. Sleep with intention. Sleep knowing that your unconscious is about to work. Sleep allowing those 2 minutes of absolute unconsciousness to completely rewrite as Jung taught us to sleep. As an act of surrender, as trust, as an act of faith in the infinite wisdom that dwells within you. When you lie down, relax your body. Allow every muscle to loosen. Allow every tension to disappear. And then, in that transitional state between being awake and being asleep, communicate an intention to your subconscious. Say something like, my subconscious is transforming me at this very moment. My destiny is being rewritten. I allow this to happen. Trust this process. I surrender to this infinite intelligence that works within me. I integrate my shadow. I embrace my totality. I allow myself to become who I truly am. And when you say that, when you truly communicate that intention, something will happen. You may not feel anything you may not see anything changing immediately, but something will happen within you. Your unconscious will receive the message. It will understand that you are cooperating. It will understand that you're allowing it. And when the unconscious senses this permission, when it senses this cooperation, when it senses this conscious surrender, it works. It works while you sleep. It works while you are unconscious. It works to transform you. When you wake up, when that absolute unconsciousness ends, you may not notice anything different. You may look like the same person. You may be in the same place. You may have the same responsibilities. But something inside you will have changed. Something fundamental will have been altered. Your thought patterns will have been rearranged. Your limiting beliefs will have been dissolved. Your latent abilities will have... All of this happened while you were asleep. All of this happened while you were doing nothing. And then, the next night, do it again. Sleep with intention. Communicate your surrender to your subconscious. Allow the work to continue. Because individuation is not a process that happens, a process that happens throughout your entire. It's a journey that continues night after night, dream after dream, transformation after transformation. Each night is an opportunity to become more you. Each night is an opportunity to get closer to your true nature. Each night is an opportunity to rewrite your destiny. And slowly, very slowly, you will begin to notice changes. Small changes at first. You will wake up feeling different. You will think differently. You will react to situations in different ways. You will make decisions you never would have made before. You will say things you never would have said before. You will allow yourself to do things you never would have allowed yourself to. And these small changes will accumulate. They will intensify. They will transform into bigger change. And one day, you will wake up and understand that you are a completely different person. Not because you did something, but because you allowed something to be done through you. Jung left us with this understanding. An understanding that is simple, yet profound. An understanding that is powerful, yet often. He left us with the understanding that true power is not within you. It is in you, allowing the power to work through you. True power lies in your ability to surrender to the unconscious. True power lies in your willingness to trust the process. True power lies in your openness to allow yourself to become who you truly are. And when you finally understand this, when you finally allow it to work, you awaken to your true nature. You awaken to who you truly are. You awaken to the power that has always been within you. You awaken to the wisdom that has always been waiting for you. You awaken to the life you were always meant to live. And when you do this, when you truly do this, your destiny is not by chance, not by luck, but because you finally allowed the infinite intelligence that works within you to rewrite your destiny. The final call, the action that changes everything. So here's what I need you to do now. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now, this very moment, you're at a turning point. You're on a threshold. You have a choice to make, and that choice will determine the rest of it. If you choose to awaken, you choose to allow your subconscious to work, if you choose to rewrite your destiny, then I need you to do 3 things. First, comment below. Comment on what you will do differently with your sleep from now on. You can comment anonymously if I need you to comment, because the act of commenting is an act of commitment. It's a way of communicating to the universe that you are ready to change. Second, subscribe to the channel, because we're going to explore Jung's teachings much more. We're going to delve much deeper into mysteries. I don't want to miss any options. Third, like this video, because when you like it, you're helping to awaken other souls who are ready for transformation. You are helping to rewrite not only your destiny, the destiny of other people. Tonight, when you go to sleep, sleep with intention. Sleep as Jung taught us. And when you wake up, you will know that something has changed. Your destiny has been touched by the invisible hand of the unconscious, and you will never be the same again.